Time management is an elusive concept to many healthcare practitioners, but is time management even the right goal? My guest today doesn't think so. She elevates the goal to time leadership. She's going to tell us what it means and how to do it well. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that what they usually want, but care is better when the provider owns the practice because that's when they're going to have the most freedom to make the clinical decisions they think are best. It's just different when somebody else owns the practice. Sometimes, usually, eventually, their agenda starts to creep in, and that's just more for the provider to think about. Let's just kick all that out and help them stay private. My guest today is Tracy Cherpeski. Tracy is a business consultant and executive coach with over 20 years of experience. She is the go-to expert for private practice owners and their teams, teaching them how to optimize their time and scale their practices without sacrifice. She helps her clients take back their time and energy to start living a fulfilled life as a high-impact provider and CEO. Tracy is also the host and executive producer of Thriving Practice podcast and works with healthcare practice owners around the world. Tracy, Happy New Year. Now you know when we're recording, and thanks for coming on Practice Care.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, and you're kicking us off here in 2024 with, it's a time of year when people think about what am I going to do differently? How can I? Everybody thinks about their time. Who doesn't? So this is a good time to be recording this. Before we get into that, though, I want to start where I start with every guest. The bio asked from you is short. That's what I read. Fill in the gaps. Help us get to know you a bit better.
Well, let's see. I will tell you first, I fell into coaching. I tripped and fell into it after multiple nudges. So I did not start out my career thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a coach. I actually was working in the corporate world as mostly in operations and a little bit of international contract management. And I just kept getting these nudges. And then they became, direct sort of one person. It was like the fourth time I heard it, sat me down and said, you really should think about being a coach. You just do this naturally.
Really?
You have the skill set. You draw out the best in people. It's what you did in corporate, even though it sometimes frustrated my bosses. and and I was like, oh, I mean, maybe, but I really didn't know much about coaching. And I, worked really hard to get 2 master's degrees. So I had a little bit of a um, mm, superiority complex about that. And then I hired a coach. And then I ate a gigantic piece of humble pie and recognized how incredible coaching is and how powerful it is. And then my coach said to me, have you ever thought about being a coach? Sorry, I
It's
think
hard to
that's
ignore all
5
these voices
times.
after a while.
You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'm a little bit quicker study now. I seem to pick it up a little bit faster. Like if I hear it a third time, I'm like, okay, we're going to give this a whirl.
Mhm.
And so she said, I would love to train you and certify you. And I can help you. You already do it naturally. You really already do it naturally. And so, but highly credentialed individuals often need to have a framework and a name for things and maybe another certification to check a box. And so that's kind of how that happened. And
Hmm.
over time, when I first started my practice, I worked, it's had multiple iterations. And about 2 years ago, I was working more as a generalist with business owners, but the vast majority of our clients were healthcare people. So we started looking at the data and we started looking at the connections
Sure.
and something happened in COVID where it became more difficult to market for probably lots of reasons that are, outside of my lane. But we listened to that and we paid attention to that. So we officially committed to being in the healthcare space in 2021, even though we were already there. But now that's just
Mhm.
where we are primarily work.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you say, there's a bit of overthinking that goes on. We're all guilty of it, you know, 6 times or whatever, and we need the credential, we need yeah, I agree, actually. I think you do, but that's, whatever, to each their own, or to each
Yeah.
our own, I guess we see it the same way. So, all right, time management versus time leadership, we're going to get into it. And pretty provocative first question that you said I should ask. So I'm going to ask it because it's better than what I was going to come up with. Why should practice owners slow down if they want to grow their businesses?
It's such a good question. And yes, I wrote it, but I wrote it because it's the thing that I kick and scream about. It's the thing that my clients kick and scream about. We are, as entrepreneurs or business owners, and with all of the hustle culture that's around us, sort of pressuring us to go, 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 we're really conditioned to like, go produce, go do the thing. And I really need to write this quote down and put it on a post-it in front of my face because I can never remember the French philosopher who says it, but it goes something like this. If all we're trying to do is get to the destination, we miss the scenery.
Mhm.
And in business, what that means is gaps, efficiency leaks, performance issues that we might overlook because we're moving too fast, our own and our teams, right?
Mhm.
And so when we slow down, we're able to, first of all, get crystal clarity around what we really want to accomplish and all the things. And I don't let my clients off the hook for what they want in life, too. We don't just do business. Like
Mhm.
if they're off kilter, they're off kilter, and that needs to be addressed. So, get super clear, slow down, look for inefficiencies, look for where we're leaving money on the table, look for opportunities, and then we move on. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but then we move on to strategy and
Mhm.
tactics. But first, we have to be clear. If we're not clear, we'll make possibly reckless and very costly decisions. We might get stuck in indecision because a lack of clarity,
Mhm.
can do that to us. And clarity really provides speed, not haste.
Yeah.
Speed. So
So difference between speed and haste for you.
haste, I think, lands in the unclear territory. I'm in a hurry,
Okay.
frenetic. I'm just go, go, go. Whereas speed is more like I have control over this, like driving a car, particularly an automatic transmission car, right? That's maybe smooth, right?
Mhm.
So when we push on the accelerator, it's smooth. We don't get jarred around by it, but we can get that speed and we can get there with relative ease because
Mhm.
we're clear about where we're headed.
Yeah, it makes sense because the real insights don't come quickly. I mean, one in a million, they come quickly. All the
Yeah.
Tetris pieces fall into place or whatever. But for the most part, it takes some grinding and some patience. And yes, it
Yes.
is harder and harder to find patience. Totally agree. We're all guilty of
Oh
that
yeah,
one.
I'm
Yeah.
hands up in the air, both of them, that I didn't come to this earth with patience. I've learned through presence that I can practice patience.
Yeah.
Ask
Yeah.
my kids.
Yeah. So, okay. So the heart of this, time leadership versus time management. I imagine if you took 10 people and lined them up and said, what do you think the definition of time management is? You'd get 10 different definitions. And if you ask the same 10, what do you think time leadership means? None of them would know what it means. So distinguish them for us,
Yeah.
what the difference between them is and why you advocate so much for time leadership rather than time management.
Well, first of all, time management implies that we have to have our hands on it and we actually have control, right? So
Okay.
we can't really manage our time, but we can come from a perspective of leadership to lead forward. So time management is something that maybe we invite our staff to practice. But as the leader of whatever team, in this case, healthcare provider, healthcare practice, it's more important to be like super clear. Again, going back to that clarity, super clear about what it is that you want to accomplish and then adjusting based on that. And so that helps shut down the noise. It helps us get super clear about the things that we really want to accomplish. And when the distractions come up, we're able to, I take my clients through a whole process to get here, but we're able to identify, is this a fire that I need to put out? Is it a fire at all? Right? We tend to think that everything's a fire and we are the fire putter outer because we're the only one who can get it done the way we do it, right?
Mhm.
That's not always the right answer. So it becomes, this time leadership becomes a really effective leadership tool. It becomes an incredible delegation tool. And interestingly enough, I thought that I was really clever in using the term time leadership. And then I thought, well, all good ideas probably came from someone else first, so I better go check. And lo and behold, it's an engineering term.
Really?
And so if you ask an engineer, if one of those 10 people is an engineer, they would be like, I know what this is, raise their hand. But it's the implication is get clear about the outcome you want, get clear about the way you're going to be directing and leading your time based on the outcomes that you desire and stick to it.
So yeah, is part of it, or maybe much of it, first deciding what's worth my time at all, almost binary, yes or no. And then if it's
Even
worth my time, then I get really efficient, clear, the sorts of things you've been talking about to
yeah.
uh, apply good amounts of time in the right ways. But if
Yes.
it's
And
not
I
worth my
would
time, then somebody either it just falls or it's for somebody else.
Yeah, if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'll
Yeah.
share this quadrant. And so for the listeners, it's a visual, but you could get something to write with and do this. So if you draw a rectangle and then put like a cross through it, you end up with 4 quadrants. The upper left hand is quadrant A, and it's like things that need to get done today. And my recommendation is there's no more than 5 things. These are outside of your regular activities, right? The regular things you would always do.
Hmm.
So 5 things, let 2 of them be personal, like take a walk, take a bath, meditate, journal, whatever,
Hmm.
something just for you. And the upper right quadrant is B, and that's like by the end of your week. So by the end of the week, all of these things from B will have moved over to A and been completed. And then the lower left quadrant is C, and that's a little bit longer term. And it depends on what you've got going. But most of the time, I invite my clients to go like 3 to 6 months. So it's a project.
Okay.
And each week, when you're ready to start working on something, then parts of C will get chunked down and moved into B. And then when you're ready, moved over to A to be complete and taken off. And then the lower right is D. And that's for me, it's really 3 Ds. It's do it now to get it off your plate and get it to stop sucking the life out of you and draining your energy and occupying your thoughts.
Hmm.
Delegate it or delete it.
Hmm.
And all 3 of those things are actually delegation. You're delegating it to yourself to get it off your plate, you're delegating it to somebody else to take care of it, or you're delegating it to the bin because it just doesn't belong anymore.
Okay.
And if you can run through in your mind as it's A, B, C, or D, when it feels like a fire, boom, now you have some clarity and now you can prioritize. Right. I think we hear the word priority, and I don't know about you, but like I go back to some teacher in high school who sort of wagged their finger, get your priorities straight. And
Yeah.
it feels like judgment. Whereas here it's like, oh, this is my priority. And this is very liberating because I can either do it and
Hmm.
delegate it that way. I can do it to somebody, delegate it to somebody else, or I can just eliminate it, take it out completely.
And so not the 3D quadrant, but the other ones, it's
Mhm.
sort of today, this week, 3 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what do you do when some shiny little object crosses your desk and you go, oh my God, and you got to get sucked into what happens if something blows up, or what do you do?
There's always going to be exceptions, right? There might be a crisis that really just then it's a
Sure.
fire and it's an A and it needs to be taken care of, and it is what it
Hmm.
is. I think the next part of that comes back to having taken the time to get super clear and to put systems in place for what happens when roadblocks, I'm doing air quotes here, roadblocks come up, because a lot of times roadblocks are distraction, um, procrastination, our own internal stuff. Very rarely are the roadblocks external. I mean, for
Mm.
most of us anyway.
Hmm.
And we can identify the external things that might come up, right? Oh, we're working on a project. I don't know if it's a really longer term, we're doing a build out of a space. Well,
Hmm.
one of the things that might come up is, delays in inspections or whatever, right? But
Right.
those are things that then you make a plan for, right? And
Hmm.
you get ready to plan around them. Otherwise, it's come back to center, right? Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm distracted. And I am like the queen of distraction. Like we're, I'm very, very, attracted to squirrels and shiny objects
Right.
and opportunities. And so, what I do that works really well for me, and my clients do some version that works for them, is just to come back to center. Like, oh, I just got distracted. Cool. Interesting. So, what is my distraction telling me? Get curious about it. Oh, my distraction is telling me that I love to have lots of things going on. Okay. So, is this distraction in A, B, C, or D?
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
Where does it fit? Because if
Yeah.
it's not a fire and it's something I could put off to like journal about later or write down some ideas, I can move that over to B.
Right.
And in my open time on Friday or whatever, then I can sit down and I can noodle that. And by then it will have been processing in our brains anyway. It's
Right.
how we
So,
work.
so time leadership, step one, what's worth my time at all? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Step two, put it in one of the 3 or 4 quadrants and then attack it as such. Is that
Yep.
right? So
Yeah,
time
and just
management
shift it
then is
around.
shifted around, right? As the week or whatever changes, reality set, whatever, life happens. So time management then is, all right, now I'm attacking the second task in quadrant B.
Yes.
Time
Yeah,
management principles apply at that level.
I think so. And I think for
Okay.
people who, maybe need an app or something like that, that's where I think a time management app can come in really handy until you've done the work of figuring out what deserves your attention
Hmm.
and in what time frame, right? What urgency, because everything feels urgent in
Hmm.
days, right? I mean, we pick up a device and in a nanosecond, we have answers to our questions. So we need to detach from that a bit and
Mhm.
recognize that not everything's going to get done today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's liberating from my perspective. And it frees up when we free up all the tension off of it, it frees up energy. And
Yeah.
then we learn how to free up more time because it's amazing how much we spin our wheels when we're frenetic and how much
Yeah.
time we actually waste.
A pattern that I am regularly fighting for myself is if I start something, finish it. Like my saying is, look, at any given time, I've got 16 things going on. It's not literally that number, but it's a lot, right? And so
Yeah.
if I'm going to open up the 17th, I just want to finish it because I don't want
Mm-hmm.
more than 16 seems to be the max or whatever it really is. So
Yeah.
just finish it before you start something else because go back to operations, like I'm the critical path. It's me. As long as I the resource am always doing something, the collective tasks that have to get done are getting done as fast as they can because I
Yep.
have to do all of them. So as long as I pick and choose the right ones and I kind of get them in a roughly good order, it's about as good as it gets. And then I just go, I guess I'm sitting here for the next few hours doing this. Okay, let's
Yep.
go.
Let's
And
go.
let's go. And it all gets done. And so
Yep.
but I've learned, um, had a couple of assignments when I was in corporate where that's really what it was. The nature of the project, it was more about speed than marketing or
Mm-hmm.
efficient. So yeah, you learn as long as the resources are always doing something and the whole pile's got to get done, doesn't really matter what order they do it in, as long as they're always
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless there's a real urgency, right? We have sort
Correct.
of our fake urgency and then we have our real urgency.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's like time leadership is strategic, time management more tactical. Is that
I would
fair?
say, yeah, I think
Okay.
that's really fair. Hmm.
Yeah. So having a strategy is better than having a bunch of tactics, would you say?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You can use a bunch of tactics. I think marketing is a great, and this is not my lane, but like marketing is a great example. Oh, we do Google ads, right?
Hmm.
And they never work. Well,
Yeah.
I wonder why they're not working. Where's the clarity? An example more from like my world is, oh, we tried that and it didn't work. Let's say, I don't know, time blocking, for example.
Mhm.
Oh, I tried time blocking. It didn't work for me. Okay, so explain to me why it didn't work for you. And a lot of times it's because they didn't know what to do with the time block.
Mhm.
Because I'm a huge fan of time blocking. Now, this doesn't work for employed people generally, right? There's probably ways to block some of your time, but like I am incredibly strict about how I block my time and I make very few exceptions. There's baked in flexibility, but I make very few exceptions
Yeah.
so that I can hyper focus when I need to.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think if you only take the tactics, you might miss your turn. You might
Yeah.
miss your opportunity to complete something or to move even in a more rapid way towards the
Hmm.
finish line or towards some sense of completion.
I see a lot of people confusing strategy with tactics. What
Hmm.
they really have on their hand is a tactic, but they think it's a strat. Do you see that?
Oh, totally. I think the simplest way to put it is the strategy is the what and the tactics are the how.
I've always thought the strategy is the how we're going to do something, and the tactics kind of, um, you know, we're going to pick a marketing example. We are going to grow, the practice by 10% next year. And so that's the goal. And one of the strategies is we are going to, um, uh, we're going to, buy, this is a poorly worded strategy. It's not very specific. One of our strategies, we're going to overhaul our online presence.
Mm-hmm.
And then tactics are website, social, blah, 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 blah. And you could even go sub in there. That's how I was trained.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same things. I just view it a little bit differently. I think more broad, but I think
Okay.
maybe another way to say that is the strategy, it is the how. Um, and the tactics then would be the action steps, the
Hmm.
activity that takes you
Yes,
forward. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
But
Yeah.
without that strategy, you're just doing a bunch of stuff. You're just
Hmm.
employing a bunch of tactics. I've seen it. Again, I'm not a marketing person, but I've seen it in marketing,
Hmm.
things that my clients have done when they try to do some of their stuff on their own without consulting an expert, for example. And I'm like, the great thing about consulting an expert is that they're going to draw out exactly what you want. and exactly what your goal is. And then they're going to know what tactics work
Hmm.
based on all this data that they've collected over the years that they've been doing this. So that's often something that, I
Right.
have to point out to clients. Like it
Yes.
just because you could learn to do it on your own, just because you can doesn't mean you ought to. And also coming back to time leadership, you know,
Hmm.
we look at dollars too, right? Like of your time, how much of it are you um, spending rather than investing? Like how much of your time are you spending doing things that you could probably make a financial investment and outsource
Hmm.
um, and get a better return on?
Right.
Whereas, so let's say they're trying to do their own marketing. The doctor, like the owner of the practice, is trying to do their own marketing when, they could use the services of a marketing agency plus teach somebody in their staff how to do their day-to-day social media stuff, right?
Right.
But they're trying to do it all for whatever reason. And let's say that their um, hourly consulting rate, just for a round number, is $200.
Hmm.
So if they were, and it takes them a lot longer than it would for a marketing, expert to do that. And let's say, so between the marketing expert, they're spending a few $1,000s a month on marketing, and then they're paying their person at their front desk who does some of their social media stuff for them with
Hmm.
the guidance of the marketing people. And that person's making $20 an hour. So
Hmm.
how many dollars are being left on the table every hour that you spend doing this?
Hmm.
And it's sometimes shocking when we actually run those numbers that, if you could do 2 more consults in a day,
Hmm.
that could then potentially become a patient
Yeah.
who is going to, be worth X amount. I mean, we do not talk like this openly in front of patients, obviously, but on the back end, we need to talk about all of these things.
Yeah. It's still a
Um,
business, you
it's
know,
still a business. Yeah. And,
it's a
and if you're not
clinical
making any
business, but it's a
money,
business. Yeah.
it's and if you're not making any money, you might have to close your doors, so
Yeah.
you don't get to keep doing what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think it's important to recognize that just because you could, I mean, I could go and watch a bunch of YouTube videos and read books and do all that stuff, and maybe I could do a 10% as good of a job on a Google ad campaign as a digital marketing professional.
Right. Right.
Would that be worth it? I'm
Yeah.
going with no. I'm going
Yeah.
with no on that. Yeah.
Did you
So
ever, when you were in corporate, I used to do this. I didn't do it when I started, but I started to do it the longer I was in it. You go to a meeting, it's 10 people, nothing gets accomplished. And I would just sit there and go, I wonder how much salary is sitting at this table right now. Just that hour's gone forever. We can't
yeah.
get it back. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I
And
know.
multiple, how many meetings like
Waste.
this are going on company wide right now? Oh my
Mhm.
God. Yeah. So,
It could have
you
been an
know,
email.
could have been a lot of things. Could have been
It could, yeah.
ignored.
Yeah, it
Yes.
could have not been an
Yeah.
issue at all.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bet that the leadership team is lacking clarity.
Everybody around that table, probably. Yeah. So
Mhm.
time leadership. Uh, be choosy about what's worth your time. Not talking about getting
Yeah.
anything done yet, but the types of things that are truly worth your time because you
Yeah.
only have so much time. And then management's how to get the things done that you choose to get done.
Totally.
Totally
And
get it.
this requires slowing down. It
Yeah, it really
requires
does.
slowing down. And, my clients, I warn them, like you like me now, and that's great. That means you're going to say yes to working with me. Fantastic. You might not like me the first month that we're working together. And I'm okay with that. I've got thick
Yeah.
skin. I know it works. I've got, I can show you all the case studies of how this works, but it does require a slowing down long enough to go beyond our regular thinking to get super clear.
Yeah.
Our regular thinking takes us through all the logic and all of our analytical stuff, which is extremely important. But we
Mhm.
need to go beyond that to get into the realm of possibility and what do I really want? Can I get dreamy? Does it seem
Yeah.
impossible, or does it just seem a little bit beyond? I always talk about realistic, but a stretch. Is it just a little bit out beyond what I think I can accomplish? Boom,
Mhm.
that's where we're going to start. So that
Yeah.
requires slowing down and clearing the decks, so to speak.
And especially, the day you opened your practice, there was you, there was a skeleton crew, if anybody. And, if the practice has grown the way you dreamed it would, it's different now. And the way that
Mhm.
what you chose to spend time on then is probably different than what it ought to be now. And some adjust and some don't even
Yeah.
realize it, right? So I can imagine that's a big Maybe
Those
some of the one of the more common things you deal with, or you deal with this
Oh
with clients?
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of a client that we worked with who has now one of the largest neuropsych practices in the Southeast, and started out with just her, I think, an admin, and
Right.
that was it. They did all
Yeah.
their own diagnostic, they did all the things, and now they have two physical locations. They have 10 techs. They have, I think, 4 or 5 admin, and then 9 or 10 other providers.
It's a serious
And
operation.
it's a serious operation, and they're very focused and intent on being like a clinic, community clinic. So they have some cash pay services like ADHD and other, IQ testing and things like that. But basically, anything that can be run through insurance or Medicaid is what they do.
Okay.
And so she will sometimes, the director, the owner, will sometimes take, I'm air quotes here, regular cases, like non high, again, I don't want anybody to think that it's just about money, but like that's a business. So from a strategic
Yeah.
perspective, when she's going to put in clinical time as a board certified psychologist, forensic psychologist, it's better for her to take only forensic cases because
Sure.
those are the highest volume. We're not working together anymore, and I'll catch up with her. I think she had 2 of her clinicians were in process for board certification, but when we were working together, she was the only board certified psychologist. And
Mhm.
you can't take, in North Carolina anyway, you cannot take forensic cases, I think, without being a board certified forensic psychologist.
Okay.
So, and they are money, like
Yeah.
they're big money, and they're high profile cases. And so my advice to her was do not take any regular cases and only take the forensic cases, and then focus on leading your team, spending one-on-one time with, especially with the
Hmm.
tech staff. That's where some of their bottlenecks were. And, be there for your team, be
Hmm.
their leader, and then
Yeah.
be the person who does the high profile stuff. And it was hard for her, but it's also where a large amount of money was being left on the table for them.
Hmm.
And they found inefficiency leaks as she started spending more time with her team.
Got it.
They just found where they had a lot of overlap and a lot of other
Right.
things that they'd never had time to comb through until she freed up her time.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm glad we've brought this issue to the surface: leadership versus management, time leadership versus time management. Um, and I say this to just about every guest. Man, we could spend a lot more time on this, but in the interest of kind of keeping it more bite-sized for our listeners, a couple of
Yeah.
wrap-up questions I ask every guest. The first one is there anything you think I should have asked you, but just didn't think to ask you?
I don't think so. I think we covered all the things that we said we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The other question is then imagine we've caught a listener's attention. Hopefully we have, and they're like, you know what, she's right. I need to shift here or start this, but I just don't know where to start. Sometimes people are really enthusiastic, but they don't know where to start. Do you have one or two, super simple things they could do to kind of get off the starting line and get going?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, draw that quadrant and write stuff in it and just
Hmm.
practice that for a week or two and watch what happens. I would love to say, take your time, slow down, get dreamy, and blah, blah. That's not quick.
Yeah.
So the quick thing would just be to jump into the practical and
Hmm.
observe what happens. So use
Hmm.
that ABCD, draw the quadrant run once, get it in your mind. You don't have to write it down every time unless you need that visual,
Right.
and start with that. I think that's a really, really good starting place to start gathering your own data and seeing what happens with your
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I was wondering, what do you think about as another one? Maybe there's one or two things that you're doing that you look at it and you go, honestly, do I really have to be doing this? And maybe the answer is no. Now you're in the
Yeah.
management, like it's sort of like you're prioritizing, right? And
Yeah.
if the answer is no, who could you reasonably give it to?
Yeah.
And give it to them and see what
Totally.
happens, you know?
And you might be surprised. I think the other thing to like look at delegation as a gift,
Yeah.
right? So there is inevitably there will be someone on your team or someone that you could even contract out to if they're not on your team for whom the thing that you think you ought to do and then you realize it's really doesn't belong on your plate, then it lights them up.
Hmm.
It's their zone of genius. It's the thing they love.
Hmm.
And so I think it's a great question, who, it's the who, not how. I think there's a book called Who, Not How, right? But it's the
Yeah.
idea of like, it's probably not me. And it's
Hmm.
not just for dollars and cents, but it's also for my own energy, my own mental bandwidth, my
Hmm.
own, ability to get the other things done. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on Practice Care and raising awareness of this issue. I'd never heard the term time leadership before, so I'm really glad that I did, because I'm going to draw the quadrant myself and see where I can go do better as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we're going to get all the contact information that you provided into the show notes for your episode. So anybody who wants to contact you, it's another way to do it. A couple of points before we close out the show. First, if you are someone like us or like Tracy that you serve private practice owners, or if you're a private practice owner yourself, and you've got some experience on the business side of private practice that you think others would benefit from, we want to hear from you. Please tell us so that we can get you on Practice Care and you can tell the world about it. In the show notes for Tracy's episode and every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks. It's really easy. Tell us what's on your mind and we will get you scheduled. And finally, please subscribe to Practice Care. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, pretty much every platform and every player. We do a new episode every week, and the easiest way to stay up to date is to subscribe. So please do that right away. Thanks very much, and until next time.